Discover the best in local business news with a subscription to the IBJ and Inside Indiana Business. For a limited time, try us out for just $1 a week for 8 weeks. Claim this limited time offer now at ibj.com/trial offer.
This is Inside Indiana Business Radio for the afternoon of Wednesday, March 11th, 2026. I'm Alex Brown. When the Indiana Pacers take the court March 25th, South Bend entrepreneur LaQuisha Jackson will be serving her signature dishes at the KeyBank Guest Chef program at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The founder of Soulful Kitchen and the nonprofit Hope for the Hungry says she wants to use her platform to give back.
I believe that you have to give in order to receive. I'm a firm believer on that. I didn't start any of these businesses thinking that they would be as impactful as they are. But at the same time, the more we do and help serve others, the more impactful it becomes.
She says her newest venture, a culinary training certification program for underserved youth, is the latest translation of experience into opportunity. A Central Indiana organization that brings together the chief executives of the area's largest companies announced a name change today. Central Indiana Corporate Partnership is now known as CEOs of Indiana Corporate Partnership. The organization will retain the same acronym, CICP. Visitor spending in Hendricks County topped $400 million for the first time in 2024, up 9% over the previous year. That's according to a recent report by Maryland-based Rockport Analytics. Visit Hendricks County said this week that the tourism industry supports nearly 5,000 jobs across various industries. From the number one source for Indiana business news, this is Inside Indiana Business Radio.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media Podcast Network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.
A North Manchester-based bioprocessing company is suing the Wabash County Board of Commissioners over an ordinance passed last summer regarding carbon sequestration projects. IIB's Aubriana Herron has more.
Poet Biorefining filed the lawsuit last week in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Indiana. As a biofuel and bioprocessing company, Poet Biorefining performs carbon capture and sequestration, a process in which carbon dioxide emissions are captured and injected below the Earth's surface to be stored permanently. Carbon capture and sequestration allows power plants to emit fewer greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. For the past several years, Poet Biorefining has been working on a CCS project in Wabash County that would capture carbon dioxide produced at the company's facility in North Manchester and store it into pore space under the facility and under nearby land. In June 2025, according to the lawsuit, the Wabash County Board of Commissioners passed an ordinance banning local improvement location permits for any structure related to any carbon sequestration project for an indefinite time period. Poet Biorefining argues that the ordinance unlawfully prohibits what the state deems to be in the public interest and usurps the power of the State Department of Natural Resources. The company also alleges the ordinance violates the 5th and 14th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution because it destroys the value of the CCS project that Poet has spent years developing. The company argues the ordinance is also in violation of the state's Home Rule Act, declaring that the state of Indiana has not expressly granted authority to Wabash County to regulate CCS projects. Aubriana Herron, Inside Indiana Business Radio.
One New Harmony, a community-driven revitalization group in Posey County, has launched a search for its first executive director. The organization, previously known as the New Harmony Business Associates, said the new position marks a milestone for the 45-year-old group, which has operated entirely with volunteers. The executive director will focus on building the organization's capacity through new events, marketing, fundraising, and quality of place projects. They will oversee day-to-day operations, implement strategic priorities, and collaborate with community partners on economic development projects. The Indiana Association of Realtors says lower mortgage rates are having a positive impact on the Indiana housing market. CEO Mark Fisher says inventory, which has been very tight statewide, is beginning to loosen up, and a market that has seen lagging sales for 2 years is beginning to thaw.
Ease up, but that doesn't mean we're out of the woods yet. We still have some very long-term inventory challenges, but right now we have more inventory on the market than we have since 2019. So buyers have more choices. We've seen some of that free up as the sellers that may have been sitting on some lower interest rate mortgages, kind of getting that pent-up demand and moving into the market. So we should see both buyers and sellers returning to the market this year.
Last year, closed home sales in Indiana rose 2% over the previous year at 80,107 sales statewide. Outgoing Indiana State Fair Commission Executive Director Cindy Hoy is this week's guest on the Business and Beyond podcast with Gary Dick, presented by PNC, a weekly conversation with high-profile Hoosiers in business, sports and entertainment, and beyond. Available now on the IBJ Media app or your favorite podcast provider. I'm Alex Brown for Inside Indiana Business Radio on Demand.
Do you want the real scoop on what's happening in Indiana business? Check out the IBJ podcast. I'm Mason King, and each week I sit down with people who make news in Indiana to get insights and perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. It's business, but you won't need an MBA. The guests run the gamut from CEOs, developers, and sports executives to artists and chefs and financial planners. If there's a theme, it's that everything has a cost. And success often depends on how you define profit and loss. So if you want to deepen your understanding of the people and projects shaping Indiana, give the IBJ podcast a try. You can find it at ibjpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media Podcast Network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.